Bring Me the Horizon are one of the most respected bands in the music industry today. However, it hasn't always been this way. The group received a lot of hate when they first bursted onto the scene in the mid to late 2000s, but over time, they've really evolved stylistically in a way that nobody expected, conjuring up a dedicated and passionate fan base. The band, consisting of Ollie Sykes, Jordan Fish, Lee Malia, Matt Nichols, and Matt Keane, have truly pushed boundaries in the metal scene, never being afraid to take on a different sound. From the insanely heavy Count Your Blessings to the alternative-esque Ammo, and even the classic arena rock sounding That's the Spirit, there truly isn't a genre that Bring Me the Horizon hasn't attempted at this point. I mean, maybe classical, but then again, this exists. In a time where rock music as a genre seems to be struggling in popularity, and as some people put it, dying, Bring Me are one of the few bands still thriving. Yet, it isn't just because of their ever-changing sound. The band experienced a real creative refresh around the release of their 2013 album Sempiternal, adding songwriter, vocalist, and keyboard player Jordan Fish into the band and really stepping up their lyrical game to another level. Especially in recent years, the band has developed a knack for writing super catchy hooks, with Ollie and Jordan having some insane chemistry in the studio. Bring Me the Horizon's evolution as a band tells an outstanding story, and their musical catalog is even more impressive. So today, we detail the history and progression of Sheffield's own Bring Me the Horizon, and see the origins of one of the last truly great rock bands left. Bring Me the Horizon's story really begins in the early 2000s, as the group's eventual vocalist Ollie Sykes would meet the eventual drummer for the band, Matt Nichols, and the two would really bond over their love of metalcore, specifically bands like Norma Jean. So they would start going to shows together and everything, but eventually over time they would get connected with this guy Lee Malia, who was in a few bands, and he was really great at playing the guitar. And Lee's origins of learning how to play the instrument and everything are pretty funny, as he's went on to tell the story. Basically, his parents were musicians and they kind of like inched him into playing it, got him a guitar and everything. And then he was like, you know what, I don't use this, like I'm not interested, like get rid of it. And sure enough, they eventually get rid of it, and 2 days after they do so, he's like, hey, you guys got that guitar around? And obviously they got rid of it, so he would have to buy one himself and eventually become the very talented musician we all know him as today. Now, Matt is the one who first met Lee, as they are going to the same college together in Rotherham, and it is through Lee that he would also meet this guy named Curtis Ward, who, upon Bring Me the Horizon's inception, was the band's rhythm guitarist. The lineup would be completed by bass player Matt Keane, who was active in the scene around this time as well, having been in multiple bands. And the way he got into playing the bass was basically, he was in college, kind of got disconnected from his friends, and he had some downtime between classes, so he bought himself a bass guitar and just taught himself. There's not a lot known about the guy, he's very mysterious, but like, what a legend. What makes Bring Me the Horizon such an interesting band, specifically from the group's inception, is how each member had different points of inspiration when it came to making music. While Ollie and Matt were really into metalcore at the time, Lee was really into that thrash metal sound and was legitimately in a Metallica cover band along with Curtis before the two went ahead and joined Ollie and Matt. Despite growing up in different towns and even being driven by different sounds sonically, they would all find each other and become connected through their passion for music. So the original lineup was Ollie Sykes on the vocals, Matt Nichols on the drums, Matt Keane on the bass, Lee Malia on the lead guitar, and then Curtis Ward as the group's rhythm guitarist, as the band officially formed in 2004. When searching for a name for their group, the five would take inspiration from a line out of a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, where Jack Sparrow says,
"Bring me that horizon."
The band would paraphrase that quote and adapt the name Bring Me the Horizon. After officially forming as a group, the band would go ahead and create a demo tape titled The Bedroom Sessions. Honestly, it is super hard to find any information on this project, and the track list is highly debated. There's a lot of early versions of tracks that would end up on the group's first album that people sometimes claim were on this demo tape, and other people are like, you have no idea what you're talking about. But we do know, almost everyone agrees, on the same front that 2 tracks, those being Shed Light and an early version of the song Who Wants Flowers When You're Dead, for the most part everyone agrees that those 2 songs, they were on this demo. But speaking of Who Wants Flowers When You're Dead, this demo project pretty much morphed into the band's debut EP, This Is What the Edge of Your Seat was made for. Released on September 25th, 2004, this project would be the world's introduction to Bring Me the Horizon. The project is a tight 4 tracks long, and during its entire 18-minute duration, it never stops throwing shit at the listener's face, which perfectly encapsulates the spirit of the band at this time during the start of their careers. They were angsty kids who had a love for heavy music and thrived on the very chaos they experienced at the metal shows that inspired them. This project really highlights Bring Me's original deathcore sound, a sound they would later abandon for a more metalcore style, which we'll get into in a little bit. This EP was recorded over the span of just 2 weeks, and looking back with hindsight, the band has commented on how bad the conditions were in the studio they recorded in, and specifically with how shitty the drums sounded. But that opinion, like I said, it was formed in hindsight. In the moment, recording for this project, it was surreal for the band, as they were all just around 17. This was their first time actually in an official recording studio. For a debut project, this EP would perform actually pretty well. It would make enough noise to get the band signed to a 4-record deal with UK label Visible Noise, and when re-released in 2005, this would peak at number 41 on the UK charts. The band would also somehow tour with just 4 tracks, which is absolutely insane, often tricking promoters into booking them and having chaotic ass shows fueled by both alcohol and vomiting on stage. But the growing pains would continue as the band would come around to creating their debut studio album, Count Your Blessings. While their debut EP gave the world a taste of Bring Me the Horizon's deathcore sound, this project would be a full display of that style. They actually would rent a house out in the country to record this record at, but according to the band themselves, they would just get too distracted and start partying in the house and fucking shit up, I guess. So they would move the operation over to inner city Birmingham with a studio right there in the city, which also would encourage them to just go out and enjoy the nightlife, and you guessed it, party even more. Lee would reflect on the album making process for this record and say that at the time, the band felt both rushed and pressured to drop a decent project, with this being the band's first release with a serious, legit label. The album would release in the UK in October of 2006, and in the United States, it would drop in August of 2007, with a daunting album cover featuring a little girl looking at an eerily lit aquarium display. The project would be 10 tracks long and kick off with the beautifully abrasive Pray for Plagues. This track alone features some of the band's most wicked guitar riffs in their entire discography, as Ali screams about people being blindly optimistic and quote-unquote counting their blessings while the world and society as a whole continues to get worse and worse and really just go to shit. In order to cleanse the world of this hypocrisy, he calls for a plague to come, requesting divine intervention in a satirical fashion, which is another theme we'd see the group explore further in later releases. This track is a really important one for the band, and I know the early work is not for everybody. It is really heavy, and I don't even think I've stated yet just how insanely heavy both This Is What the Edge of Your Seat was made for and this record really are. But like I said, Pray for Plagues is crucial to mention when talking about the Bring Me the Horizon story. This album, it certainly isn't perfect, and the band has went on to acknowledge that countless times, even going as far as to kind of disown the project. But you could still see there were some definite high points, and overall, you just sense that there was something special about these guys. There was something special about Bring Me the Horizon. Whether it was their unique song titles or dedication to sticking to a truly brutal sound, looking back, you could definitely see that they had potential. Potential that they would definitely fulfill as the years went on. And that growth, it wasn't just musical. The band would continue to grow a reputation for being kind of wild and immature at their live shows specifically. But you gotta remember at this time, these guys, like I said, they weren't even 18 yet. But it wasn't just their behavior that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, as the band would receive a lot of negative reactions when they started really branching out and performing at bigger events. They would open up for Killswitch Engage during the band's UK tour, and on this tour, notoriously, Bring Me the Horizon would get tons of garbage and bottles thrown at them mid-performance. But while some people hated on Bring Me the Horizon during this early time in their career, the band wouldn't let it discourage them when it came to creating new music, and more specifically, they wouldn't let it deter them from trusting their own creative ideas. As for their follow-up to Count Your Blessings, the band would take a true left turn, abandon that deathcore style, and adopt a metalcore sound for their second studio album, Suicide Season. Releasing 2 years after their debut record, this album would see a true progression in not only the band's abilities and talents musically, but also their sound, as, like I said, they went from that deathcore style to metalcore. For those who don't know the difference between deathcore and metalcore, I'll dumb it down and make it real easy to understand. Essentially, deathcore is all screaming vocals, like extremely fucking heavy shit, while metalcore is a mix of both clean singing vocals and, of course, screams. Also, with metalcore, you have like more variety in terms of the pace of a track. It often goes slow and then fast, while deathcore is just always aggressive as fuck. But I gotta make it clear that while on Suicide Season, yeah, Ollie's vocals, they're a little more easy to understand. He's definitely singing way more than he did on Count Your Blessings. It's still very heavy, and he's still mostly screaming. It's just a lot more easy to understand. I personally love Ollie's singing vocals. I think he has made some insane progress in terms of his range as the years have gone on. But although his voice wasn't exactly showcased on Suicide Season the way it would be on future releases, it still was a huge step for the band stylistically. It was a very early first step into the group eventually making some classic arena rock-esque songs like they would in 2015 with That's the Spirit, which we'll get to in a little bit. We're talking about Suicide Season right now, and as for the album itself, I mean, the title, it pretty much sets the tone. The album art would consist of a girl standing in front of a white background, looking very blankly into the distance as she holds onto her ripped out intestines. The cover, according to Ollie himself, would be a dramatic representation of the sorrow discussed on this album, as this girl, she's exposing her guts to the viewer in the same way that Ollie, with his lyrics on these dark tracks, is opening up to the world. This record, similar to its predecessor, would be 10 tracks long. And despite not being exactly on par with the band's later quality releases, it's still a very enjoyable listen to this day and holds some of the band's most iconic tracks that fans like me were still bumping today. For starters, the insanely catchy Chelsea Smile stands out to me as one of the best tracks on this project, with an insanely memorable drum kick, awesome guitar riff to complement it, as Ollie on the hook is talking about this secret that he holds deep down that is so sinister, it's so dark, it's so serious, he refuses to tell anyone about it. After the bridge, you get this instrumental break, which is really awesome, and it has elements of electronic music a little bit, and it's a very early sign of the band not only exploring electronic elements with metal music, but also just showing interest in wanting to explore different genres, something they would do very much as the years have gone on. Also gotta point out just the morbid nature of naming a track Chelsea Smile, which is the act of cutting someone's face so that it permanently resembles a smile, like some serious Joker shit. But it's really the tip of the iceberg in terms of the dark nature of this album. There's so many lyrics that are just beautifully and very sinisterly describing the band's feelings of hate and suffering. It's really beautiful in a morbid way. And while this project seems really negative almost when I'm breaking the tracks down lyric by lyric, I can't let it be lost here that this is a really fun listening experience. As dark as the subject matter is, that's real life. That's why it's so relatable. And also, with the lyrics being so well written, the riffs being so catchy, I mean, it is hard to listen to this album without headbanging a little bit. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the track Diamonds Aren't Forever, which has one of the band's most iconic choruses. The title seeks inspiration from the common phrase, diamonds are forever, which is often used when people put a ring on it and get married, and that commitment, meaning till death. But with this track, Ali is saying nothing is forever. Those diamonds, they're not forever because we all have an expiration date. We all die someday. It's very dramatic, like a lot of the messages on this record, and along with it, Ali's saying that, hey, because we all die someday, we don't have forever on this earth, you better do it your way. He believes that living by someone else's rules, influenced by either religion or even societal norms that people follow to strictly fit in, isn't really living. You're better off dead. The last song I really want to highlight in this era of Bring Me the Horizon's career is the closing track of this album, titled Suicide Season. There's a lot of elements in Bring Me the Horizon's early work that kind of gave people the Iggy that, you know what, these guys, they got something special about them. I'm going to look out for their future releases and such. And to me, the biggest thing specifically on this album is what I talked about earlier, just how well written some of the lyrics are on this thing. And specifically, this last closing track is one of the most well-written metalcore tracks of all time. This track's really all about Ali's friend, whose father passed away, and after his dad died, he really couldn't handle the grief, and he took his own life as well. Ali's talking about how he would do anything to get his friend back, and how he wishes he can go back and, save his father, bring him back to life, so he wouldn't lose his friend. And it really highlights a cycle of grief almost. It's like, the kid who took his own life did so because he was grieving his father, and now that he's gone, his friend Ali has to grieve his passing. And Ali kind of relates that. He draws a parallel and makes this metaphor about staring at broken clocks. For those who are depressed, time doesn't really matter. Yes, the clocks turn. Yes, the days turn into nights. Yes, the months change. But every single day for them, it's the same sadness. Every single day is gray. Really just hammers home the severity of depression and how serious that shit can get and lead to somebody taking their own life, ending it all. Clocks don't turn for the brokenhearted. And Ali's vulnerability on this entire album, as displayed on this track especially, would be just as important to the band's evolution as their switch in sound. Previously, the band was just a group of teenage kids who loved metal and wanted to create some hardcore ass shit just like their favorite bands that they loved to listen to. But this album in particular, it marked a sign of maturity, as now they had a message that they wanted to deliver. Suicide Season is really Bring Me the Horizon's breakout album. While the projects following it would be overall better quality, better projects, and also would perform better with sales and such, this is the album that put them on the map, specifically in the metalcore scene. Remember, before, they were getting bottles thrown at them and everything. But then people were like, you know what? That Chelsea Smile, that's a fucking hit. And also, this record is so important in their discography because it sets the stage for not only their eventual evolution sonically, in terms of their sound, but more importantly, in my opinion, their future reputation as a group that was very open in talking about their mental health struggles. The band would tour a lot following the release of Suicide Season, being a part of the Warped Tour. They would even do their own first headlining tour in the United States, but it is during the 2009 Taste of Chaos tour that Curtis Ward would leave the band. As I talked about previously, Curtis was an original member of the band, being a part of the original lineup as the rhythm guitarist, but after the release of Count Your Blessings, his relationship with his band members began to worsen. There's a lot of factors that led to him departing from Bring Me the Horizon. Firstly, I guess he was very uninvolved with the writing process in Suicide Season. Lee was really responsible for all the riffs and everything. And also, they're going on all these tours. I guess he's deaf in one ear, so he only has one working ear, and in that ear, he started to develop tinnitus pretty damn bad. Those factors, along with the tour life just not really being for him, with him being very homesick and missing his girlfriend, all kind of led up to him being very unpleasant to perform with. So him, along with the rest of the band, kind of agreed it was best to part ways. While their at-the-time guitar technician would take Ward's place for the remainder of dates on the tour, Bring Me the Horizon would be in need of a new rhythm guitarist, and for that role, they would choose Jonah Weinhofen. At the time, Jonah was the guitarist for the band Bleeding Through, but he was most known for his work with the group I Killed the Prom Queen, and Bring Me the Horizon would enlist his talents to fill Curtis's position as they began to work on their third album, There Is a Hell, Believe Me I've Seen It, "There is a heaven, let's keep it a secret." I think Matt Nichols described this record perfectly when he said in an interview that basically, "There is a hell" is the repercussions that come with Suicide Season and Count Your Blessings. This album is really moody, especially with Ali's lyricism, and in my eyes, it's the last of the band's growing pains before they truly came into their own. The band has went on to say that they took a lot of inspiration from different genres when it came to making this album, and I think you can really hear that with the tracks that make up this project. But while still sticking to their metalcore roots, Bring Me the Horizon really takes some chances on this thing, with the inclusion of synthesizers and orchestral samples. As for the subject matter on this thing, I would argue that There Is a Hell is one of the band's darkest projects, as Ali, for the first time in their discography, is really opening up on this thing about his demons, about his addictions, and this predates him going to rehab and getting clean. So his struggles he's talking about here, they're very real, and you could feel it in both his delivery and messaging. There Is a Hell would drop in October of 2010, and honestly, captivate me off the title alone. The title would be explained on the album's intro track, Crucify Me, and be exposed to represent an internal battle between bliss and demons, happiness and depression. Rather than subscribing to biblical scriptures and believing heaven and hell to be two literal destinations in the afterlife, Ali proclaims that these two extremes exist inside of us, constantly struggling for power and leverage as represented on the album cover. As for Ali, we know that struggle for him personally, it's one in which evil and the darkness is winning, has the advantage. He's talking about making it through the night, trying to make it out alive. We definitely could tell that he's seen a lot more hell than he has heaven, hence heaven being regarded as a quote-unquote secret. I talked about this album being likely Bring Me the Horizon's darkest. I think a big aspect of that is how desperate Ali sounds with his screaming vocals. They're a lot different than those on Count Your Blessings and Suicide Season. It really fits the moody vibe of his lyricism. We understand that pain a little bit more as Ali goes into details on track 3, titled It Never Ends. And to me, this is likely the band's most underappreciated track. Ali is singing in a way on this track that had never been heard previously in the band's catalog, as it seems like he's discussing a toxic relationship with a girl, but in reality he's discussing his relationship with his addiction. Talking about starting off as a one-night stand, leading into a fling, relating to his drug problem, maybe trying it once at a party due to peer pressure or something, and then it becomes a habit, something where the usage is continuous. Something that was once a fun trip has turned into a necessity, and it has a grasp so tight on Ali that he sees no way out of this. It constantly comes back, it never ends, as he feels as if he's one foot in the coffin already, close to death. While Ali doesn't clarify what substance he is speaking on here, I think it's safe to assume that he is talking about ketamine, a drug that he has notoriously had issues with in the past, and even past this song, unfortunately. We just talked a few minutes ago about the track Chelsea Smile off Suicide Season, where Ali said, "I've got a secret. It's on the tip of my tongue, it's on the back of my lungs." Talking about his demons that he would never dare to open up to people about, let alone the world, on a song. I think it's safe to assume also that the secret he was holding was his addiction to ketamine, which he is very vulnerably opening up about on this record. No matter how hard he tries, he can't seem to overcome his addiction. The pain never leaves, as he has an involuntary craving, a need to consume the very thing that is continuously poisoning his body. As said on the chorus, it never ends. Such a tragically beautiful, well-written track, in my opinion, and the themes of Ali's addiction, it kind of is all over this album entirely, including on the very, very, very heavy banger, Alligator Blood. This is one of the heavier tracks on this thing. Like I said, banger. But as for the subject material, it's talking about how someone kind of plays with their life by abusing substances, relating the act of feeding an addiction to playing Russian roulette, playing with one's own life. The guitar riff on this thing is absolutely insane, but my favorite part about this track is how the deeper you get into the track, longer it plays, the heavier Ali's vocals get, specifically his screams, and just his growls become so menacing. It's awesome. The last track I want to talk about before we move on from this era kind of brings us back to Ali's personal struggles, with the really tragic song titled Blessed with a Curse. His lyrics give us insight on how his addiction has damaged his personal relationships in his real life, specifically the one with his significant other, I'm assuming some type of girlfriend. He states that he is blessed with a curse. Blessed with the ability to move people, of being talented in the music industry, but cursed with the lifestyle that entails. A lifestyle of fame that encourages him to feed his demons and afford substances. Essentially, while he loves this girl very much, his feelings are so strong. Somehow, the grip his addiction has on his life, it's even stronger. He can't overcome his addiction, and as it stands in between himself and his partner, it's unfair to expect her to stick around and watch as he essentially destroys himself. Under the influence, he said many things that he regrets, and he wishes he could take them back. He wishes he could take the pain away that he's caused her, but he simply can't. He can't make her forget his words and actions, just like he can't overcome his vices, and he encourages her to give him one last embrace before getting away from him for her own good. It's a very tragic track that exposes the severity and seriousness of Ali's addiction to ketamine. There Is a Hell, as an entire project, as a whole, it truly doesn't get the respect it deserves in Bring Me the Horizon's discography, and I understand why. It's in between the big one, which we'll talk about very soon, and, that breakout record, as I described it, Suicide Season. But it's on this record where you see something that is very crucial to the story of Bring Me the Horizon. Ali opens up about a secret that he swore he would never tell back on Chelsea Smile. After There Is a Hell, Ali would go ahead and check into rehab. He would finally take action against his vices and get clean. However, after going through the process of rehab, there was one aspect of it that really rubbed him the wrong way. Ali would voice his frustration with the way in which many workers at the facility pushed him to look to religion to get clean. Rather than tackling his issues head on or analyzing factors that may have led him to abuse substances, Ali would say that all these nurses and therapists, it would essentially shove religion down his throat and claim that the only way to truly get better and improve oneself was to submit to God and repent for their sins. The way Ali saw it, why would he worship something that let him get so far gone in the first place? Why would he worship something that has never been proven to really exist when he could be working on the thing he could control, which is himself and his own emotions? Ali's experience at rehab, faced with the proposition to worship something he strongly was against, is what fueled the band's follow-up to 2011's There Is a Hell. Doubling down on his personal beliefs and looking back on the darkest days of his life, Ali would put his everything into what is widely regarded as Bring Me the Horizon's greatest album, and in my opinion, is one of the greatest rock albums of all time. That record being Sempiternal. In my mind, it is this project that set Bring Me the Horizon up to be the staple band we all know them as today. Before we get into the actual contents of the record, we gotta look at what led up to its creation. For starters, the band's new rhythm guitarist Jonah would be kicked out of the group in 2012, only being a part of Bring Me the Horizon for one project. To this day, we still don't know exactly what triggered the band to fire Jonah, but we do know that their manager would sit him down and basically present him with a list of all the grievances and things the band really didn't appreciate about how he was to them and how he was online, mainly posting a lot of inappropriate and offensive shit. But while Jonah did leave the band before the release of Sempiternal, he was a part of the early studio sessions, and he has writing credits on 2 tracks, those being Sleepwalking and Shadow Moses. With Jonah's departure came the addition of a brand new member to the band. However, this new member wasn't somebody to fill Jonah's shoes in terms of being a new rhythm guitarist. This new member was somebody who was proficient with the keys. He knew his way around a keyboard with some synths, and he would also prove himself to be a damn good vocalist as well as an outstanding writer as he truly started to work with the band in the studio and gel with them. Joining Bring Me the Horizon officially in 2013 was Jordan Fish, who was relatively unknown at the time in the music world, in the world in general. He was a part of this very experimental rock/electronic band Worship, and he was playing the keys there. So at the time, joining Bring Me seemed pretty damn random. But with both his work on Sempiternal and future releases, he would truly prove himself to be the glue for the group. At first, it was kind of like a one-off deal. He was just working with the band for Sempiternal during these sessions in kind of like a producer-esque role, helping with the melodies and everything. Specifically, him and Ollie would work, just the two of them together, a lot, as Ollie at this point in time was really starting to show interest in singing purely, not just screaming on tracks, but improving his vocal abilities and range, which Jordan would really help him with. But like I said, supposed to be just like a one-off deal. Jordan was just going to contribute, sign up for this one project. But as they started finishing these songs and putting them in the chamber, they realized that there was an incredible chemistry between Ollie and Jordan. So Jordan would officially become a member of the group in early 2013, and not only would he contribute to helping Ollie greatly with his writing, with his vocals, but also he was an excuse for the band in a way to finally go full-fledged down that route of infusing electronic elements into their metalcore style. We saw hints of it on Chelsea Smile, on It Never Ends, but now they have this guy who literally excels at playing the synths on the keyboard. It was perfect. But finally, the key to Sempiternal is the band's long drive and journey into finding their own sound. Shortly after the release of Suicide Season, the band became bored of the traditional deathcore sound that they first adopted, and even resented the idea of being a solely metalcore act. They wanted to find a sound that they could call their own, one that was unique to them. They weren't those same kids who made Count Your Blessings anymore. Their tastes had changed, and so had their desire to not just replicate those sounds they enjoyed in the music industry, but create their own identity, pave their own path. We saw some experimentation on There Is a Hell, and that was a big step, but the addition of that new member, of Jordan Fish, would really propel the band to experiment even further. Taking inspiration from all different types of genres, the band would truly infuse metalcore with their own unique style on this record. And the sonic revolution that the group seemed to undergo in this era perfectly complemented Ollie's key message and theme for this album. Overcoming your demons, not in submission of some powerful supernatural being, but doing so for those you love, and proving yourself to be powerful in the process. In other words, simply being your own master. Sempiternal is described as everlasting, forever and ever, and it's very similar to the term eternal. But the differences between those two words, it's essential in understanding the concept of this record. Like I said, Ollie really didn't like how people tried to force religion on him in rehab, and his discontent for that experience not only is reflected in the lyrics on this record, but also in its title. While both sempiternal and eternal, they pretty much mean the same thing. Eternal is often used in a biblical sense, meaning forever and ever outside of the bounds of time, conditions that really only a supernatural being, a god, could create. Sempiternal means never ending, but in an earthbound way, disavowing any biblical proclamations about eternal life being possible. Sempiternal is the key term used to describe Ollie's state of suffering pre-rehab, and you could really feel his sorrow on the incredible opener of this album titled Can You Feel My Heart? Right from the get-go, you can really hear the inclusion of the band's electronic elements on this album, on this first track, and you also got really heavy drum patterns. You got these awesome, desperate vocals from Ollie. Suffering from a toxic mix of depression and addiction, Ollie's asking the listener, can you feel his pain through his vocals, through his delivery as the beat drops, and what can I say, man? After apologizing to all the people in his life who have been affected personally by his own bad decisions, by his own demons, his mother, his father, his lover, Ollie pretty much describes his situation that is present on this album perfectly on the bridge with the powerful lyric, "The higher I get, the lower I sink. I can't drown my demons. They know how to swim." As the beat drops, the guitar wails just a little bit differently on the outro here, really reflecting the cold state Ollie is singing from, as he is running away from this very thing that he wishes to escape, yet it seems impossible. As the track list furthers, Ollie gets into his negative views and experiences on religion on bangers like The House of Wolves and Empire, slickly utilizing biblical references to proclaim his disbelief. Ollie's overall message is this: there's no salvation. While it is a bleak one, his point is basically that you can't just count on somebody in the sky to make all your problems go away. You gotta take the action yourself. And you gotta get better, not because you're scared that you're gonna get punished in the afterlife, but because you want to improve yourself. Track 4 is a fan favorite, and again, one of my personal favorites on this album, Sleepwalking, which is another track where Ollie really goes into detail and describes how addiction has taken over his life. Rather than living life like a normal person and experiencing your traditional day-to-day trials and tribulations, Ollie experiences life in a lifeless manner. He's always high, and if he isn't, he's chasing the next one. It's like he's legitimately sleepwalking through life. Yeah, you could see his body with your own two eyes, it's present, but in reality, he's simply not there. And again, another track with a very electronic, synth-heavy instrumental loop that just adds so much to the song. Somehow it really captures that like melancholy energy in a way. But without a doubt, the standout track on Sempiternal has to be the powerful, ominous, and spiteful Shadow Moses. The track kicks off with these female vocals, and they're very haunting. They're sampled from a Metal Gear Solid video game, which is actually the game that inspired the name of this song as well. But the way the band utilizes this sample, it's almost like she's singing in tongues. It's mesmerizing, especially if it's your first time hearing the song, before these electronic drums kick in, and it kind of snaps the listener back to reality as Ollie begins singing this awesome chorus describing the lifeless appearance of those who are tortured by their own vices. Ollie almost sounds like he's having an anxiety attack on this song, as following that first chorus, the real drums kick in and you get these crazy riffs, just a crazy sonic atmosphere created, very frantic, as Ollie's detailing how, I thought I buried you, talking about his addiction. I thought I got rid of this shit, but you slipped through the cracks, you came through my ceiling, and you're back to haunt me. It's very chilling. And aside from the very deep and serious subject matter, just listening to it on the surface and not investigating the lyrics, it's like, this is a kick-ass metal song. But this song is so important because it gives us context to the name of this album, as Ollie legendarily screams, "This is Sempiternal." No matter how far or fast he runs from his demons, Ollie can never seem to escape. His misery, it's sempiternal, and no matter what he tries to do over and over again and again, his vices win, and his reality resumes to its miserable cycle. Highlights continue following Shadow Moses, including the very slow, methodical banger and the snakes start to sing, where you're hearing Ollie kind of sing more about his demons and how it affects his personal relationships. And then you got the insane Antivist and Crooked Young, which are like both these spiteful anthems that kind of further on Ollie's outlook on annoying people who spit their rhetoric and opinions on people when in reality they're just hypocrites. But this album ends with a very heavy bang, with the track Hospital for Souls. It starts with a monologue of sorts from Ollie, discussing his outlook on life post-addiction, claiming that he was almost blinded by his demons to the point where he didn't realize that everything he wanted in life, he already had. And the beat drops, and again you get that like wailing tone from the guitar riffs. Some awesome synths on this one as well, as we look one last time in depth into Ollie's journey with misery, with the last chapter, and often the chapter that some people can never really close. That one being when you actually tackle that depression, when you look at your addiction head on and you truly try to get clean. And his description of depression on this track, it is just so fucking real. Like, no matter how colorful everything is around you, the world, it just all looks dull. You're powerless. Another crazy thing that's awesome about this closing track is it really ties the two motifs, the two themes of the album together. Ollie's struggles with addiction, his own personal vices, and his pessimistic outlook on religion, as Ollie's talking about the contradiction in a way that is in the statement where people say, you know what, I can't wait to die, I can't wait to inherit God's glory and go to heaven, when in reality, everyone is scared of death. It's the unknown. Another standout line for me is, why explore the universe when we don't even know ourselves? People using religion almost as a crutch, a distraction of sorts, putting a band-aid on a wound that requires a lot deeper care. Ali also exposes how his depression has kind of graduated him past just being a normal pessimist into damn near nihilism, as he's saying how he can't fear death anymore. He's lived so many days lifeless, sleepwalking. He's almost overdosed so many times that why would he fear it after all the misery he has endured? He's already been through hell. And then you get into verse 2, which is so freaking powerful, listing off these things that you often hear as a depressed person from therapists, from people at these rehab facilities, from people you love. Like, hey, have you been skipping meals? Have you been cutting yourself? Like, we're going to try something new today. How do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, by the way? It is just so powerful. And here's the thing about those people asking those questions. It's like, yeah, their heart's in the right place, but they don't really understand. They can't really help. And Ali's desperation, it becomes even more known as the drums, they're just getting louder, and he has to scream to be heard. He cannot avoid his issues or have someone else help him overcome them. He can't just look to a god to make everything right for him. In order to be truly free, Ali must face his vices head on and defeat his demons himself, throwing himself into the proverbial fire of addiction and depression and finding salvation amidst the flames. It's an absolutely insane way to end this album, with the track itself being so powerful and tying the major themes all together at once, and not only matching the sonic heaviness of this entire record, but somehow topping it. And, you know, with the record as a whole, Sempiternal, outstanding project. I mean, this is the album that a lot of people say is Bring Me the Horizon's magnum opus. This is the album that really cemented the band as no longer being just those immature kids who used to have chaotic live shows. Sempiternal proved to everybody that these guys, Bring Me the Horizon, they were a band to be respected. They truly took the metalcore sound and changed that shit forever. But again, rather than staying comfortable, enjoying their own success, their own work, and sticking to the sound that they revolutionized, the band would once again take a very interesting turn and stylistic direction for their follow-up to Sempiternal with 2015's That's the Spirit. Now, I personally have a soft spot in my heart for this album as a whole, because not only was this my introduction to Bring Me the Horizon, but it was really my introduction as a young kid to music outside of the shit that was on the fucking radio. Like, no offense to Pitbull, but I was like, holy shit, what is this? But apart from my personal story now, this album was a true culture shock for fans. After being known as a deathcore and metal band with tracks heavily involving screaming vocals and guttural riffs, this project was a real departure from the band's roots. It resembles more of a hard rock style. More than ever on this new album in 2015, Ali was singing rather than screaming, and it produced some amazing classic rock hits, sorta with some arena rock inspiration. But let me really start from the beginning. So Sempiternal drops, and everyone's like, holy shit, Bring Me the Horizon are like the fucking band to watch. Everyone's on the edge of their seat like, what's next for the group? And people would get their first taste in fall of 2014. The band would drop 2 tracks around this time. One would be a single, and one would also be a song called Don't Look Down. It was for a soundtrack for this movie with Ryan Gosling titled Drive. Honestly, a lot of fans, I don't even think like today, know of this track existing, but it does. It's not on streaming, but I think it's definitely worth like hearing once if you never have. But as for the single, it would be titled Drown, and it would very much encapsulate the newer sound Bring Me we're gonna have on this That's the Spirit album. The combination's really interesting, honestly, for That's the Spirit, but it was gold in my opinion. It was basically electronic a little bit, kind of that shit off Sempiternal. A little more moody though, and then mixed with classic arena rock, that kind of sound, and then you still have some screaming a little bit in the choruses and the breakdowns, but like I said, more hard rock. To symbolize this change, the band would brilliantly, on both the cover art for Drown and the music video released for the single, dress as the Beatles when they were on the Ed Sullivan Show, kind of showing that transition of them, you know, going to a more classic rock sound. It's brilliant. That single would hold fans over until June of the next year, 2015, where umbrellas would begin to be spotted all around London, and the band on their socials would post a lot of pictures with umbrellas as well. They would also release a teaser video at this time, and when fans put it in reverse, the words, "That's the Spirit," could be heard. Finally, in July, Ali would confirm that The album titled That's the Spirit would be dropping very soon, and they would drop another single titled Happy Song around this time. An additional single with the song Throne would drop before the album officially released in September of 2015, and like I said, be a real culture shock to fans with the band taking on a completely new sound. Although Ollie still screams on most of the tracks on this record, you could definitely argue that the screams aren't as intense and are definitely more of an attraction, as a majority of his vocals on the album, they're clear. He talked a lot in between the releases of Sempiternal and That's the Spirit about improving his vocals, and you could tell that the work paid off, with Ollie sounding great on this album and only getting better with future releases. But along with his vocal range improving greatly, Ollie would really step up his writing game with the help of Jordan Fish on this album. The duo would really prove their chemistry here with this record, writing some of the most catchy hooks and melodies that rock had seen in the 2010s. Not to mention Jordan's insane backing vocals that complemented Ollie amazingly, not only in the studio versions of these tracks, but also live. Of course, we gotta mention the negative reception from some longtime fans of the band, who were just like, "We want that heavy shit, bro, this isn't heavy metal." But like, you gotta also at the same time appreciate the whole new market Bring Me the Horizon opened up to. I think most naysayers have come around now and are able to appreciate That's the Spirit is just a solid fucking rock record. But like I said, this album would be super important as it saw Bring Me the Horizon really start to grow in popularity. Sempiternal really rocked the shit out of the metalcore scene, but this album would open up the band to whole new audiences. It honestly just hit at the right time. There was people like me in my generation that were just starting to, get our own tastes and everything, and we heard this shit, we were captivated by Throne and Bring Me the Horizon's sonic aesthetic, and it made a whole new generation of fans. I titled this video, Bring Me the Horizon, the last real rock band left, and don't get me wrong, that's totally clickbait. There's a lot of great bands like Code Orange and Ghost fucking shit up right now, putting out great music. But I say that in a sense of like, you don't get songs like Throne anymore. That is just a classic fucking arena rock anthem. You don't get that shit anymore. I will say too, the stylistic choice of like alternative rock in a way, it really helps build this atmosphere that complements the lyrics in a way that I don't think metalcore could have. As for the theme of this album, it's truly all about mental health struggles and depression. And that was seen in Sempiternal, right? But that kind of theme, it had to share the spotlight with the two main ideas, which were Ollie's issues with religion and hypocrisy, and of course his addiction. The record's link to the theme of depression is represented on the album cover, with the artwork being pretty minimalistic, just simply an umbrella shielding away some raindrops. And the themes of this album are set up in a beautifully depressive manner on the impressive opener, Doomed. And again, we're really seeing the effects of Jordan pushing the band forward with electronic elements, as it's a really spacey instrumental to start off this track before you get like a deep breath that's like and then the instrumental hits, and again those electronic elements with the synths. And right from the get-go, we understand where Ollie's coming from, our narrator in a sense, where his headspace is at, as he comes out with these very dramatic yet cold lines, displaying to the listener that he is in a very dark headspace. As the drums kick in, the hook on this track sheds some light on the meaning behind the album cover, with Ollie almost taunting those around him and the universe as a whole to send some more shit his way, send him over the edge of misery, because he's so used to sadness at this point that he needs something to make him feel again. We gotta also say how awesome the progression of the guitar riff is on this song. It doesn't just repeat over and over again. Further you get into the track, it changes in tone and pace. It's fucking awesome. Lee fucking killed it. It's like it's getting more intense, but at the same time it's holding that melancholy vibe. It's fascinating. But since we're shouting people out, I also got to shout out on verse 2, one of my favorite lyrics on this record. When it rains, it fucking pours, but I think I like it. In terms of setting the tone for the albums they belong on, I think Doomed might be the band's best opener. It just perfectly sets up both the concept of That's the Spirit and the overall atmosphere. But we see an even bigger display of the band's cynical approach to discussing mental health struggles with track 2, Happy Song. I know some rock bands have definitely done it in the past, but like Bring Me the Horizon's use of sampling is fucking genius. I mean, for a rock band to do it especially, like it's a tactic that's typically done in the world of hip hop, but but just goes to show how forward-thinking and experimental the band really is. I bring it up because this track begins with a sample of a high school cheerleading team doing a chant that's like S-P-I-R-I-T, Spirit, let's hear it, which really helps the overall concept of this song, really drives the point home, and again, kind of brings up the comedic sarcasm in which Bring Me the Horizon are kind of going at tackling these issues from. The funny thing about the sample actually is I remember watching an interview with Jordan and Ollie where they basically admitted that like they just took this, they utilized a sample, they took it from a random YouTube video that a high school uploaded, and they to this day like have never gotten notified for any legal action. But this song is a tongue-in-cheek track that's sarcastically talking about just putting on a happy song, putting on a happy face to hide your anxiety. It's also extremely fucking catchy like a lot of the other songs on this album, and the chorus is performed in this very ominous tone of voice, and it's talking about the disconnect between, you know, you being depressed yourself and then your loved ones trying to get involved, try to care for you and help you. They want to help and everything, but they can't. The depression, the anxiety, it's like it's an internal battle in a way. My favorite part of this song actually is during the second verse. It's in lead up to the breakdown, and on the instrumental you get these like beautiful fucking light keys that just add to the instrumental so much. Again, that progression I was talking about earlier that Bring Me the Horizon does really well on their songs. They almost sound like bells coming in. And again, it's leading up to that breakdown, kind of preparing the listener for that change of pace, but it's just genius. The drums and the guitar all fade out and you get this electronic just wow, 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 as Ollie's kind of really getting serious with his delivery, trying to return to that mantra of just singing a happy song, but with his delivery being more and more frantic, you understand the hypocrisy and contradictions of that very statement. The drums come back in and Lee starts fucking shredding, and Ollie ends the track basically exclaiming that that's the spirit, tying us back to that overall album theme. You're almost trying to like hide and mask your pain, as Ollie has become that blindly optimistic person, you know, trying to deny the reality that is his sadness, his depression. I love this track too because I've had so many experiences in my life when I was like struggling with shit and people around me were just like, okay, you know what you gotta do sometimes? You just gotta act like it's okay. Like, just start smiling, like fake it till you make it, which is an insane thing to tell somebody. It's that whole kind of style of like, hey, just put on a happy face, it'll be okay. Just fake it till you make it. That kind of bullshit rhetoric. Like, this song is just a total fuck you to that idea, and I love that. And then we get on to track 3, which, as I put it earlier, is like this rock anthem, Throne. And it's honestly a fucking juggernaut of a track with this electronic, synth-driven instrumental. The song is all about building an empire with the stones people throw at you, overcoming betrayal and hate, and embracing your emotional scars in a way to become a tougher and stronger person. In that chorus, holy shit, you can throw me to the wolves, tomorrow I'll come back, leader of the whole pack, beat me black and blue, every wound will shape me, every scar will build my throne. Talk about a classic hit right there. And with Throne too, in the lyrical content, like, there is an underlying theme of betrayal on That's the Spirit. You have the very spiteful True Friends with that iconic chorus line, True Friends stab you in the front. Then you have the very sharp and direct What You Need, which has some very vivid imagery. But there's a track on here that's unlike, honestly, anything the band had ever done previously, and that song is Follow You. This is straight up a romantic love song that somehow keeps the normal edge that Bring Me the Horizon songs have in terms of lyrical content, but it does so over like an emo trap beat, and it's awesome. The song is really just talking about when you're, you know, in the thick of it in a relationship. You have very strong feelings for somebody, but you're in a point in a relationship where like you don't know exactly if you could trust them with your emotions, but no matter what, your emotions are there, and it's a thing where, you know, you let them drag you through hell. You would literally walk through hell with them if it meant that through that experience, you could be holding their hand. You know, you're blinded by love, and sometimes that's for the better, but sometimes it's for the worst. Also, you gotta talk about the fact that Ollie's vocals here, it's almost pure singing. While he does have some edge to them for sure, like, there's no screaming on this track especially, and for even one song on a Bring Me the Horizon album to not have that, like, following Sempiternal, this was a big deal. It's really just another sign of the band growing up though and maturing. Like, in life, you kind of learn that like the most important thing you have is your relationship with people, specifically those you love, and like, man, I really love this song. There's 2 other tracks on here that are like really outside the box for the band. You have Run, which is this like electronic alternative song that is really fascinating, really out of the box, you know what I mean? But then you have the very risky closer titled Oh No, which is pretty much just a full-on pop song. And it's talking about, you know, People who don't really ever want to grow up. You're in a relationship with somebody, but like they want to constantly just relive their 20s, you know, go out drinking and partying every night, and you kind of want to, you know, settle down, maybe have some kids. I don't know. It's up to you. I love this album, but like I just kind of feel like it's a weak closer, in my opinion. I think the song that is right before it, Blasphemy, is a way stronger track. It's a song that really reconnects the band back to that sempiternal energy of Ali questioning the beliefs and behaviors of religious people. This time, I think, in a lot more respectful of a manner. When on Sempiternal, it was just like crazy madness. Ali saying, fuck your faith, like, holy crap. But the last song I really want to talk about before we move on to the next Bring Me the Horizon era is the song Drown. It's really just a powerful anthem. The track begins with this screaming vocal, and it is literally pitched throughout the song to flow with the chorus and everything, to, you know, go with the instrumental. It's really fascinating. And the real underlying emotion that drives this song is desperation. Ali is in a place where he needs someone to pick him up. He's really low, but there's no one there for him to lean on. He's calling out for somebody to save him from his misery and stop him from drowning in his depression, but nobody is around to hear his screams for help. Man, you play this shit after a breakup, that shit'll fuck you up. Depression and loneliness, they really go hand in hand, and this is just an insane banger from the band. It's really, it's best described as just a real song, you know what I mean? And overall, we end the era that is That's the Spirit with Ali asking, who will fix him now? The That's the Spirit era for Bring Me the Horizon would officially end in April of 2016, as the band played Royal Albert Hall with a full orchestra. The event would be recorded visually and audio-wise, and you can listen to the set on streaming, which is just outstanding. But it really was a representation of the juggernaut that the band had become. They were literally these kids who got together in college and wanted to create some hardcore, chaotic-ass music, and now they were playing Royal Albert Hall. The band had transformed in front of the world's very eyes, from a reckless deathcore act to a respected and popular rock band. But with That's the Spirit being such a new direction for the group, everyone was wondering what the hell was next for the band. They took a risk that really paid off, but now, would they return to a heavier sound? Absolutely not. Bring Me the Horizon's follow-up to 2015's That's the Spirit will without a doubt be the group's most risky album in their entire catalog, and that record would be Ammo. This is without a doubt the band's most polarizing release. I mean, if That's the Spirit pissed off the old head Bring Me the Horizon fans, like, Ammo pretty much sent them into a coma. On this record, the band would be the furthest they have ever been from their metalcore roots, having multiple full-on pop songs, some full-on electric tracks, and barely any hardcore metal joints on this thing, which some people, for some reason, just couldn't handle. I think people can kind of look back on this album a little more fondly, due to the fact that they kind of got reassured that Bring Me the Horizon still could be that ass-kicking, heavy band with the album after this one, Posthuman. But it really sucks, in my opinion, that the band, they really took a chance, they took a risk, they're very vulnerable on this album, and people just took a shit all over it without even giving it a chance, you know? Like I said, without a doubt, the band's riskiest effort in their catalog, and the rollout really started in August of 2018 as random posters featuring this hexagon-esque logo and this question, do you want to start a cult with me, started being seen around various cities. That hexagon-esque thing would soon be revealed to be Bring Me the Horizon's new logo, and it's really sticked over the years and come to truly represent the group. I even had that shit tatted, man. These posters would all have phone numbers and websites that all led to the same message, promising a salvation on August 21st, 2018. On that date, the band would drop a brand new lead single titled Mantra that really played well off of cult themes and in general, the way in which people can be both manipulated and brainwashed. Following the single, the band would announce that their brand new album would be coming very soon in January of 2019 with the official title of Ammo. That term, ammo, is Portuguese for I love, and was actually inspired by Ali's feelings for his wife Alicic, who is Brazilian. While the band's previous works were centered around concepts that were very dark and serious, and they're very powerful in their own right, this album would have a central theme that was a lot less sinister. While there are tracks on here that discuss things like the negative aspects of love and even some dark historical concepts like cults, the lighter subject matter allowed for the band to really try all sorts of different sounds. The album starts off with this very spacey interlude-esque track as the intro. It's titled I Apologize If You Feel Something, and it transitions awesomely into that lead single Mantra. First time I heard this thing, man, I got chills. I was driving in the Smoky Mountains, and it was just like the perfect night to listen to a Bring Me the Horizon album, man, especially one that's like more alternative like this. And it almost sets up like the overall themes of the album and predicts a little bit of what fans' reactions would be to this record. Like, hey, I know you're familiar with us for having these kick-ass riffs that you can headbang to, but like, we're gonna talk about romance. And if you're mad about that, I'm sorry if you feel something. A little sassy. And it really opens the door for the discussions that are had on this album. You know, all about being open with your emotions, expressing the love, and it fits the stage of life these guys are at now because everyone's like, oh, they're not creating heavy shit. Man, they're not those reckless teens anymore, faking out promoters and going crazy on the tour bus. Like, they're starting their families. They're feeling love for their wives. They're feeling love for their kids. But then you get those crazy drums from Mantra. And I'll shut the fuck up because this is a rock banger, you know? And it's not super heavy, but the drums are great on this thing. And like I said, really discussing those cult themes. But another topic this album really dives into, interestingly enough, not only on this song, but in various others, is in general just the human mind, both its ability to express emotions and store knowledge, but also be manipulated so easily. Like I said, great drums on this track, also a guitar riff that's pretty damn infectious, and you got these bell-like sounds that really make up like an industrial kind of feel. But while you could see this thing kind of, it's a predictable evolution from That's the Spirit from the band, in my opinion. The next track is completely out of the box for them. It's an EDM style track, and that is Nihilist Blues. Got like these distorted alien-like vocals, an awesome synth progression. Like I said, it's fully electronic EDM style, and it also features Grimes. I just fucking love this song. Along with Mantra, I think the most familiar song on this album that's most close to Bring Me's roots has to be Wonderful Life. It features Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth. It's full of screams, kick-ass riff, but then when you get to the end of the song, you get some little experimentation from the group a little bit. And it's like this full orchestra, like you got these trumpets and these horns. It's really a grand close to a pretty kick-ass track. Very melodramatic chorus too, I love it. You know, nobody cares if I'm dead or alive. What a wonderful life. The sarcasm there from Bring Me the Horizon's classic. Also, again on this track, we see the band return to that discussion of the human mind, where Ollie's on the intro talking about how when you get to the age of 27, it's when the brain kind of goes on the decline in terms of absorbing information as it did in its youth. I think the band's exploration into like consciousness, it's so fucking random, but for some reason it really fits like the aesthetic in terms of the grimy album cover, the sonic sound of this record. Like, I don't know why it just fits. Sugar, Honey, Ice, and Tea also is full of riffs and everything, but I wouldn't really say it's close to Bring Me the Horizon's older, heavy sound, as it's more of like a punk rock track. It's still a fun song though. One thing I really like about this album too is there's two like interlude-esque tracks. One is Fresh Bruises and the other is Ouch. Kind of EDM inspired a little bit, but I really enjoy both of them as transition pieces. I think the album is throwing so much at you from different directions, like electronic track, Danny Filth yelling at me, to the point where these moments where you can kind of chill and just enjoy the beat, collect your thoughts a little bit, it's really helpful. Ammo also has songs that are pure pop, kind of similar to Oh No off That's the Spirit. You got the more spiteful Medicine, but also the more romantic and lovey Mother Tongue, which in a way is a spiritual successor to Drown. If you remember our discussion on that track, Ollie was really singing about needing someone to support him romantically, a shoulder to lean on essentially, and he has found that, and he basically just celebrates the love that he cherishes on this song. But like I said, Ammo, it doesn't just explore the positive aspects of love, it also explores the negative. Medicine does that. It's a very spiteful song talking about somebody getting a taste of their own medicine, as you could expect. But In the Dark, in my opinion, is just a more solid song. The track speaks about a situation where essentially you find out the person that you care for very much is cheating on you, and it dives into that feeling of betrayal that is also mixed with the sadness of your memories with that person now being tainted. You also got Why You Gotta Kick Me When I'm Down, which is a really weird track, but it's weird in a good way. You got like this violin sample, these strings that are, paced up to match the tempo. The track essentially talks about Ollie's relationship with the public, as He received a lot of hate during his divorce, and he was kicked, essentially, as the title says, when he was down. When you're used to only really being shown love for your talents in music as a public figure, I'd imagine it's pretty heartbreaking when all these people start judging your character and hating on you when, like Ali said in the song, they don't even know the real story. Ammo's also got a beautiful closing track called I Don't Know What to Say, and it essentially talks about Ali and his friend, where his friend, he was battling cancer, and it's like, you can't deny reality. The person is unfortunately dying, but like, you also want to be positive. It's a really awkward position to be in, and it's really sad to watch. And you also got this beautiful guitar riff by Lee just sending us off, from not only this track and this story, but also the album as a whole. It's really awesome. But with Ammo being such a polarizing record, the one song I want to close out this era with, the one song that I think is crucial to understanding this period and Bring Me the Horizon's career, is the track Heavy Metal, which really discusses the band's scrutiny they have faced over the years for changing their sound. You got this like industrial electronic instrumental on this song that gives it that grimy feel that's present throughout this entire project. This track also features Razzle from The Roots, which is ironic as hell with the song, really being aimed at those people who bitch and moan about the band not just being strictly metalcore. But Ali really describes the passive-aggressive way in which people try to pressure Bring Me the Horizon into making music that's heavy like their early work. He draws this perfect metaphor to picking petals, asking himself, do the fans love him, or do they love him not? It's beautifully dramatic in the way that only Ali Sykes can do. And of course, my favorite part about this song is when the drums pick up, the guitars get heavier, and Ali ends the track basically screaming, "This ain't heavy metal," like bringing vocals similar to Suicide Season, kind of showing those fans like, hey, yeah, we still got it, we could still do it, but right now, this is the sound we're going for. Like, broaden your fucking horizons, man. Despite all the songs on Ammo being very different and taking inspiration from different genres, they all come together to create this unique project that makes for an extremely fun listen, exploring the consciousness of the human brain and emotions from the human heart. As I said, as time has passed, I think more people are giving this album its flowers, giving it the respect it deserves, but I hope one day people can really just I don't know, man. I've been an Ammo supporter since day one, bro. I think people just went at this thing with a limited mindset, as in reality, the softer sounds of Ammo were just the best avenue for Ali to express those emotions that he wanted to express. After taking a little hiatus from creating heavy metal tracks, Bring Me the Horizon would remind everybody just how heavy they could get, with a new single in November of 2019, just months removed from the release of Ammo. The track would be an impressive fusion of the electronic and experimental aspects of Ammo, mixed with the brash and heavy vocal stylings of Sempiternal, and the lyrical magic that was showcased on That's the Spirit. The track would be called Ludens, and it is really this beautiful fusion of every major sound that the band has experimented with. After experimenting with very different sounds and numerous genres over their nearly 15-year tenure as a band, it had seemed as if Bring Me the Horizon had finally found a sound that they could definitively call their own. And it would culminate in what many people regard as the group's most solid project, and one of the greatest in their discography. But before we get to that, we gotta kind of look at what set up that record, and it really has its roots in a moment in the band's discography that honestly, it seems almost too specific to be a coincidence. The band would do something very interesting at the end of 2019. It was the same year where in January they dropped Ammo, and in the fall, like I said, just a few months after they released Ludens, and they would put out this project that was very experimental, kind of like a demos of Ammo type of record. The project was called Music 2, and then it lists a bunch of activities that you could be doing or participating in while you're listening to this music, and I'm not going to list them all because we'd honestly be here for an extra 2 minutes. But it's truly a unique listen. I really like putting this thing on, especially when I'm studying and shit. And I think Jordan really shines, Ali as well, just in terms of showing off their abilities as producers. You hear just really inklings and elements of tracks that would be put onto songs that were on Ammo, and they're showcased more definitively, I would say, here. You got things that sound like they're off a movie soundtrack with Devastating Liberation, and then you have pop bangers like the collab with Halsey. It's a real trip to listen to, and it furthers, the band's interest of the topic of human consciousness. It's really weird, honestly. But there's specifically one moment on this record that is super strange, and it happens on the track Underground Big. The song is like 24 minutes, I think, and it starts out as a hip-hop track, and there's a feature on here that kills it. It's a great beat, too, and then it infuses elements of, rock. You got the drums kicking in, the guitar riff and everything. It gets a little harder, and then the beat really breaks down until you have that sample. It's this really weird noise, and Ollie basically has this long-ass monologue over this sound. In that weird moment I was referring to, it happens when Ollie says this, about 21 minutes into the track. He says, "It feels like we're at the end of everything. And it feels like it's gonna be some fucking massive volcano or eruption or a fucking tsunami will happen. You know that? That's what's gonna happen. Some fucking mental disaster in a couple of years. Like mental disaster." Now this project would release on December 27th of 2019, and Ollie's strange premonition about a world-altering event would be fulfilled, as about 3 months later in March of 2020, this virus called COVID-19 would spread all across the world, shutting down businesses and schools, keeping people inside their homes on lockdown, and unfortunately taking millions of lives. Taking inspiration from real-life events that they seemingly predicted, the band would work together over the pandemic remotely and craft what is likely their biggest project yet, with 2020's post-human survival horror. After the release of Ammo, the band would go on to say that they were kind of done with the standard album process. They found the whole concept of camping out in a studio for a couple of months and forcing themselves to bust out 8 to 10 tracks for a record. They found that kind of took the enjoyment out of making music and in turn kind of took out their passion for it. So they were going to try a new approach, which was basically putting out shorter projects more frequently. Rather than your big 8 to 12 track album, you're going to have a tight 6 to 8 song EP. This change in their creative process, it was going to be a big deal, and to kickstart this new era for the band, they announced this 4-project collective of EPs. The collective was set to be called Post-Human, and an EP would drop every single year over a 4-year span. And one of them would be really hardcore, similar to their older days. Another one would be more pop punk. Another one would be fully electronic. And then this record, the first one of the series, was really a fusion of kind of all their sounds, kind of like Ludens. Speaking of Ludens, you may be asking yourself, like, what the fuck is the deal with that track dropping in November? Like, the Music 2 album dropped months after Ludens. The Post-Human conversation didn't even really happen until about the pandemic. The track dropped so early because the band got approached to do a song that would end up on a soundtrack of a Kojima game. It was called Death Stranding. But they were given the ultimatum that basically the track was due in a week. That was the deadline to make it on the soundtrack. And Bring Me the Horizon would essentially make this song in their hotel room in less than a week. It's insane. They have a video documenting it. It's really interesting. They're really into a heavy cycle of touring, both when they made Ludens and after it in late 2019 and early 2020. And it's in February of 2020 that the COVID-19 pandemic would really begin, and the band would be forced to go back home. Shows were canceled, lockdowns were enforced, and it's cramped up at home that the band would essentially decide to start crafting their new project. They would document these sessions on YouTube and work together over Zoom calls, sending audio files and recordings virtually. The record would really play off the wild state of the world that was 2020. There were riots over racial discrimination, schools were done virtually and no longer in person, or butting heads over health procedures. It really seemed as if we were in the end times, and in the heat of it all, Bring Me the Horizon would come together and essentially create a soundtrack for all this turmoil. 3 singles would drop for this project, one being Ludens in fall of 2019, Parasite Eve in the summertime of 2020, and then right before the album released in the fall, Teardrops would drop about a week prior. Post-Human Survival Horror would officially drop on the 30th of October in 2020 and really be an insane fusion of the band's best sounds. The record takes place in a post-apocalyptic world and has themes of survivor's guilt, general anxiety and emotions that were brought upon by the lockdown, and humanity's relation to nature. The cover art would be a very interesting piece that was done by Ollie's wife, Alyssa, where the center of the piece is this 3-eyed character. He's got his third eye opened, and he's surrounded by his fellow beings in a forest, almost like a sense of a new society being born, one that is connected deeper to nature after the fall of a major civilization, with nature being the one constant in this ever-changing environment that we call Earth. This thing kicks off with an absolute bang with the intro track Dear Diary, which really connects the group back to their metalcore roots. This is a heavy-ass track. Ludens really reassured fans following the release of Ammo that Bring Me the Horizon, they can create some heavy shit if they chose to. But Ludens is a track that's really built around the insanely heavy breakdown. The rest of the song, pretty minimalistic. Whereas this intro, I think it really brings the band back further to that early sound that fans love, with the Sempiternal era vocals, Ollie screaming about the same terrible news being repeated over and over again every single day on the TV over these insanely wicked riffs. As for the writing itself, it takes inspiration from that commonly used tactic that you see in movies, in TV shows, where you're learning about the main character from their writings in their personal diary. It's a really interesting creative decision to use that trope in a musical sense, but it's also very effective, as right from the get-go we get an understanding of the unstable mindset our narrator is in, as well as the unstable nature of his world at large. Each verse begins with that Dear Diary format, and as the verses progress, the first one, the second one, the third one, Ollie sounds more and more rabid in his voice, and his descriptions of the world around him, they get even more crazier. And then finally you get this big moment at the end of the third verse where Ollie goes, "It's not like it's the end of the world, oh wait." Crazy breakdown, it's fucking awesome. Truly a full guns blazing intro that throws everything at the listener and creates for this truly chaotic sound that really captures the spirit of this project as a whole. And also, it gives that sound that fans have been bitching for years, to an extent that it's almost like too much to handle. And it leads into a very pivotal track of this era, that being track 2, Parasite Eve, which is kind of a pandemic anthem. This song really took inspiration from everything COVID-19, from the lockdowns to political figures butting heads regarding health procedures. But what's crazy is this song was actually made prior to the lockdowns even happening. The band, I guess, took inspiration from the video game Parasite Eve, and then as the song got closer to being finished up and everything, lyrics were obviously inspired from the events of real life. So really sci-fi-esque electronic metalcore song, like Ludens in a way, but it takes the sci-fi energy even higher with these AI-esque vocals done by Alyssic on the pre-chorus, kind of warning people of the doom to come. The beat drops, the drums kick in, and you get this very methodical riff creating a total environment of just doom, as Ollie is asking the important question, when we forget the infection, will we remember the lesson? This song is also very theatrical for a metal song, but between the crazy ass riffs and Ollie's screaming vocals, it kicks ass. Then we get into the very new metal inspired track Teardrops, which has this insanely catchy chorus that basically describes a state of sadness where you've cried so much cause shit's so fucked up in the world around you that you've essentially ran out of teardrops. Also, an insane breakdown on this track, with Ollie's screams just deafening and the riffs coming in so heavy, it's insane. Obey is a really fun collaboration with Youngblood, who I think honestly topped everyone's expectations as to what his performance would be like on a Bring Me the Horizon project. But it's a track that discusses the abuse of power often seen with public officials, who make these decisions on things that could seriously affect our livelihoods, essentially gambling with our souls. But don't bat an eye or question anything they're doing. Trust them. And then you have another crazy collaboration for the band on this project, with Kingslayer featuring Baby Metal, the all-female metal group from Japan. It's a super heavy track, especially with Ollie's lyrics on the pre-chorus just saying, "Get the fuck up, wake the fuck up." And just the diversity of sounds you get on the chorus, with Baby Metal having, those all-female vocals, right? Sounding very innocently, while these gnarly riffs are going on in the background. It's just brilliant. It's why Poppy is such a great artist, in my opinion. The track One by One follows up Kingslayer, and it is a lot less intense, but it is still a great track, and in my opinion, the most underrated one on this album. It's another one with heavy inspiration from Linkin Park, and it features the Nova Twins, who have a great performance on here. Just a slower paced track, especially with the chorus, that really allows for the listener to catch their breath after the very high energy Kingslayer, before this one transitions awesomely into Ludens. I really love this track. Ludens is so unique because not only is it minimalistic, like I said earlier, but also it's a track that is really built upon the listener's anticipation. It's another song on this album that really digs into the apocalyptic sci-fi video game energy, and it's essentially criticizing leaders who are out of touch and refuse to take action towards issues that are really important to the younger generations. The track almost goes in cycles. There's a very spacey, industrial, instrumental, very synth-heavy song as well. The whole time, the track is really teasing you with these little bits of drums, little bit of a riff, until finally, at the end of Ali's last verse, he goes, "You call this a connection?" And then he screams, "Give me a break," and you go right into the breakdown, and it's just insane. Being the first thing released by the band after Ammo, this is a song that really showed a lot of people that Bring Me the Horizon, they still had that edge to them. And it's a really important song that kickstarted this new era. Post-human survival horror ends with the beautiful closer, "One day the only butterflies left will be in your chest as you march towards your death." This is a really haunting ballad with no drums, no guitars, just this ominous instrumental as Ali sings back and forth with Amy Lee of Evanescence. This collab ended up happening because Bring Me the Horizon was sued over Nihilist Blues. The melody on the track is very similar to an Evanescence song, and their manager took legal action. But after the case was closed and Amy received her writing credit on the track on all streaming platforms, her and Ali would end up talking and basically straightening things out and get along pretty well. That all led to this ballad here, where Amy is singing from the perspective of nature and Ali is representing mankind, and it's a track that's essentially centered around climate change. Nature's essentially saying that if I go, you go, and speaking on the severity of climate issues getting worse the more time goes on. Predicting our potential future, this EP ends with the blunt and tragic line, "Love isn't in the air," hoping to inspire change and shine a light on a matter that affects not just everybody on Earth, but everything. It's a beautifully tragic end to this awesome project from the band that I think is one of their most solid in their discography. I'd argue Sempiternal's highs, they're a little bit higher, but to me, post-human survival horror, there's almost no skips on this thing. There's just so many bangers, there's never really a dull moment, and in a way it's like this sign of the times, a reflection of the chaos from the time in which it was born in. And the crazy part about it is, it's like the band has only gotten better from here. The band has been pretty open in saying that they've went through a lot of ideas for this second post-human album, kind of like, they've had a struggle in terms of making sure all the tracks on it are up to par with the first album, and honestly, I have no problem waiting a little bit more if it means that the album quality overall is going to be better. But despite the fact that the second project in this installment hasn't dropped yet, they've been dropping singles and everything. They've still been active dropping shit, and I don't want to get into too much detail on their activity post the first post-human because I actually plan on making a video eventually when the installment is over covering all the post-human projects. But the band's dropped a lot of singles, with the first being Die For You in late 2021. Then they'd release Strangers in summer of 2022, and both of the tracks, they're fine. I enjoy them, but I didn't really think they were on par in terms of quality with those first post-human tracks. But this year in 2023, they have been fucking killing it. It all started, they first released this pop-punk-esque track Lost, which has honestly had me in a chokehold since they put it out. They also released this heavy-ass track called Amen, which honestly is heavier than anything on the first post-human album, and is interestingly enough a collaboration with Lil Uzi Vert, the hip-hop artist. Uzi is really a legend in their own respect. They've been known to be a huge fan of heavy metal, really since they bursted on the scene during that SoundCloud era. But the collabs between Uzi and Bring Me the Horizon, they wouldn't just stop there with that one single, as Bring Me the Horizon would be featured on Uzi's album Pink Tape, dropped in the summer of 2023 on the track Werewolf. Uzi definitely does their thing with their vocals as well, but it's like Bring Me the Horizon were just given the reins creatively on this one. They almost took the song over in a way. But I can't state enough how insane it is for Bring Me the Horizon to be featured on such a mainstream record. Like, it's just, I still can't believe this happened. They'd also be featured on this Corpse track released around the same time as Pink Tape, titled Code Mistake, which honestly has my favorite vocal performance from Ali this entire year, where he says, "You bring the match, I'll bring the kerosene." I love that line. It kind of mixes ammo and deathcore as well. I can't believe how heavy Ali went on this thing. And then finally, the latest release from the band as of this filming was the single Dark Side, which is kind of similar to Werewolf a little bit, but it's a little softer in terms of the vocal delivery. It's pretty nice on the ears. It's a hard rock track, kind of like That's the Spirit in a way. They were actually set to drop that second Post-Human record titled Post-Human Next Gen in September of this year, 2023. But the band had to delay the release due to some personal issues going on. But either way, the record is definitely coming soon, and it is honestly a great time to be a Bring Me the Horizon fan. I can't wait to see what the future holds for the band. I'm super hyped for Next Gen, and hopefully it comes out pretty damn soon. But also, regarding the rest of the Post-Human albums, I mean, I cannot wait to hear what a Bring Me the Horizon project that's just fully electronic, like, what is that gonna sound like? It honestly seems as if the band has yet to hit their creative peaks so far. They keep evolving, they keep getting bigger, they become this juggernaut to the point where now they're headlining festivals. Once being a group of hardcore kids from Sheffield, England, who wanted to make some heavy shit, Bring Me the Horizon have truly become a staple in the music world today, really holding shit down for rock music in a rough period for the genre. And as they continue to push boundaries, they continue to push the envelope, the band has truly built one hell of a legacy for themselves already. And we'll see what the future holds as we await the arrival of Next Gen.